available to you afterwards. So if you don't catch a particular detail on something or you don't get a chance to ask a question, I will be available for you, so will Brian, and all of the resources as well. Myself, I work for the Bonneville Environmental Foundation, and our program is called Clean Energy, Bright Futures, which is a program of BEF. And we are focused on transitioning our energy development into clean energy. And we're really focused on this statement here: powered by a clean energy economy, our communities and environments are thriving and resilient in one generation. So our program mission and vision: we are preparing the next generation to lead a clean energy future. We are a career-connected energy program, education program, that trains educators to bring clean energy, science, technology, skills, and knowledge to life for their students. The challenge that we are facing, that we are trying to address with our program, is how do we inspire and prepare future energy workforce and consumers to engage with the clean energy economy when energy is not something that is very well understood and often overlooked by many, often invisible for many. So just a little bit about myself, and then Brian will introduce himself as well. My name is Iain Sterry. My pronouns are they, them. I'm the STEM engagement and training manager with Bonneville Environmental Foundation at CE. I am a former museum educator, so I spent over 15 years working for science museums across the Pacific Northwest, traveling the entire Northwest to teach about STEM topics. And now I have stepped into a role of supporting you, teachers, in how to bring clean energy and climate solutions into your classroom. And then I'm going to turn it over to Brian, who's going to introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Brian Vollmer-Buhl. I have 25 years teaching in rural schools of Oregon. I'm currently at Cottage High School. And one of the things that I particularly enjoy doing is developing different units for my students to learn about renewable energies. And so I'm going to be sharing some of that with you a little bit later. One of the things that I've found is that with smarter balanced testing in my junior and senior classes, I have a week where I'm missing half my students. And so it's been a great opportunity for me to basically dive into renewable energy in a very fun, engaging way with my students through some hands-on learning.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. And just some context, Brian is part of our Clean Energy Fellowship program. He's been participating in a number of our different fellowships. So we have been working with Brian for a long time in developing renewable energy curriculum, and he's going to give you some examples in just a moment here. So here's what we're going to try to squish into an hour and a half if we can. We've done some introductions. I'm going to take about 10 minutes, and we're going to do some activities, get ourselves up and moving around and thinking, and we're going to be looking to make energy visible, which is one of the first steps towards energy literacy that we identify for students. After that, Brian's going to provide us with some clean energy curriculum examples. A lot of the lessons that he's been developing, marine renewable energy will be one of those, and we even have a marine renewable energy station that we're going to demonstrate later. Then we are going to spend a little bit of time talking about energy literacy and mostly energy justice. And I will say we want to prioritize time for the hands-on stations today. So this is a section, my laser pointer works, look at that. Energy justice and energy literacy, we might cut that a little bit short, unfortunately, so we have time for you to play and explore, because that is a priority for you today. Like I said, everything will be available for you after we're done. And then we're going to wrap up and talk about some of our program offerings, some of our upcoming professional development and fellowship opportunities that we have. Brian is going to share with you some reflections on his participation in the program. And then as well, everyone is going to get to go home today with a little solar circuitry kit for themselves or for your classroom if you want to. Something for you to play with, for you to continue exploring these ideas. And I will also be putting a sign-up sheet at the back for you to sign up for information about our program. So that's the rundown. I'm going to go ahead and start a timer, and then we're going to get started, and we're going to give you some time to play. So we start a lot of our programs in talking about energy fundamentals, talking about how do we make energy visible. It is invisible, but it's part of our world. It's an intractable part of our world, and we have to understand how it works so we can participate in this clean energy transition. So a challenge for you today. Brian has dropped some sticky notes at your table, and what I would like to do, and I'm not going to define a lot of these terms right now, but I want you to look around this room and drawing on your own background knowledge as a science teacher, find and label stored energy and flowing energy. And what those terms mean to you, stored, flowing, and what you define as energy is up to you. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. See if you can label 2 different sources of energy around the room. Maybe don't go out into the classrooms. Keep it in this big room here. Label it clearly. What kind of energy you see. Is it stored? Is it flowing? And maybe even what evidence. How do you know that it's stored or flowing? Okay, I want you to stand up, grab a sticky note, find some energy, label it, and I'm going to call you back in 2 minutes. So thank you for joining me in that activity. I hope it gave you an opportunity to stand up and move around and get your brain moving and thinking. If you wouldn't mind, maybe 1 or 2 people, just raise your hand and shout out, what energy did you label, and is it stored or flowing? Anyone want to shout out an example? Stored, and say it again? Wood. In the building? The wood of this building? Excellent. So there's energy stored in the wood that this building is made out of. Someone labeled my laptop up here, and they said, stored, there's a battery in here. Yeah. Brian, do you have an example?
Yeah, I got my plate labeled. This is some stored food and energy.
Stored energy in food. Excellent. Anyone label some flowing energy? Where was flowing energy in our room? I see some folks pointing up, so no one got a sticky note onto the lights on the ceiling, but we know there's energy flowing because we see the lights lit up. And obviously one of these cords probably has some stored energy or some flowing energy in it. Yeah, excellent. So we really enjoy doing this activity, and we use it as an example of sense-making and student-directed inquiry in our teaching. So we use a sense-making frame for a lot of our work where we're helping students make sense of the world around them, and we're helping them do it through inquiry-guided lessons where they are using their own background knowledge to start making sense of the world, start trying to understand where energy is. I would love to spend a lot of time on this today, but like I said, we're going to squish a lot into a very brief period of time, so we're going to do our best. Once we've explored energy and start thinking about where it is in the room around us, we like to try to define energy. It's a word we use a lot, and we use it in a lot of different settings and a lot of different contexts. For our context, for clean energy and renewable energy, we're thinking of energy as in the energy that's in the world around us, maybe not like the emotional or mental energy that we have in our bodies. So what is it? We use sentence frames to help ourselves define this. So energy is used, energy is important because, and energy means. And these are some great sentence frames that you could provide for students to help them start thinking about how would they define energy. So energy is the capacity to perform work. Energy is used, but not used up. Energy is important because it makes the universe possible. And energy means the ability to do something. Now, I'm not going to go much more into detail about energy today because I also have a video I want to show you to maybe stimulate some noticings and wonderings. But I do want to talk a little bit about the conservation of energy. So we know that energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be transferred and transformed. Energy transformations are a fundamental part of renewable energy. How do we transfer stored energy into flowing energy? How do we transform a source of energy into something that's more useful for us? So it can be transferred from object to object. If you're a physics teacher, maybe you've done the tennis ball on the basketball trick before. Has anyone ever done that? Okay, Brian's done it, a few people. If you hold a tennis ball and a basketball at the same time, touching each other, and then you release them at the same time, the energy from the basketball, which is lower, will hit the ground first, and will transfer that energy into the tennis ball, and the tennis ball will go flying across the room. It's an incredibly simple demonstration of energy transference. Also a great way to get yourself hit in the face with a tennis ball. So energy can be transferred from object to object, but it can also be transformed from type to type. And a great question is, where do we see energy transformed in our world? Some examples here, and I have a lot of other examples on this slide, this slideshow here, but I'm going to go forward to a video that we use a lot in our program to generate some ideas and questions for you. And I'm going to play it with just a simple question. So I'm going to skip through a lot here. These will all be available for you. These are all fundamental slides around types of energy. But this is what I would like you to watch today. So we use noticings and wonderings. Does anyone use that in their classroom, noticings and wonderings? Excellent. It's another great way to encourage student sense-making, encourage student-driven inquiry. And so I'm going to play this video for you. I want you to think about, what do you notice and what do you wonder? So what's a question you have about what's going on here, and what do you also notice about what's going on? All right. What do you notice and what do you wonder? We have about a minute left before I'm going to turn it over to Brian. So I would like you to turn to your neighbor and share with them what's one thing you notice from this video and what's one thing that you wonder from this video. Go. I saw some great noticings and wonderings being shared. I also heard some people using their mouths to describe the sounds that they heard. A lot was clearly generated in your minds as we watched that video. And this is also, that video, it's not on the screen anymore, this is an example of phenomenon-based teaching. We use scientific phenomena, something that can generate a lot of noticings and wonderings, to really kick off student interest and create student engagement and excitement about lessons. So scientific phenomena are an incredible way to really get your students excited. It's a great way to generate lots of questions that students want to answer through their own exploration of a topic. So that's a great transition to hand it over to Brian, who's going to come up and he's going to share some of his clean water power examples, some curriculum that he's been working on. There's that for you.
Thank you. So I'm Brian Vollmer-Buhl. I teach at Cottage Grove High School, and I've been working with clean energy to develop a unit. Then this one was focusing on renewable marine energy. And so this is a set of about 8 lessons that I put. This is a set of about 8 lessons that I put together, and I tried to pull in different parts of renewable energy that my students would find interesting. And I had some of my own criteria, and that I wanted it to be engaging to my students. I wanted the students to be able to construct their own understanding. I wanted other teachers that use this unit to have the opportunity to decide if they wanted this to be a teacher-driven lesson or a more a student choice board, where they got to choose the activities within each lesson and complete those. And there is a lot of sharing of knowledge. And then as we wrap up the unit, we do several different hands-on activities where they can look at the different ways that power is currently being developed with renewable energy and water, and then ways that energy potentially can be developed with some of the emerging marine energy technologies. And so this is a list of the 8 different lessons. I'll go into some more of the details on what each lesson involves in a sec. So our central question was, how can the power of moving water be used to generate electricity? And so we started this off with a phenomenon, and much like what Iain did, is I had a bank of about 6 videos I shared with the students, and the videos were anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes long, where it showed the students the power that was held in nature, whether it was moving waves on the Oregon coast, wind tearing the tops off those waves, flowing water. The phenomenon for that was an escaped barge basically getting sucked underneath the bridge and sunk. And after the students watched these, they had to make observations and formulate questions for our driving question board. And our driving question board was, what do we need to know to turn moving water, waves, and wind into electricity? And so the next set of lessons are taking pieces of what the students are asking about and providing them ways to formulate their own answers to those questions. And so the first lesson involves energy conversions, much like what Iain just went over. And so for this, the students had the choice of 3 formats that they could get their information. Regardless of the format the students had, they had a science notebook sheet that they were accountable to filling out information for that was common in all three of those different modes. And so there was basically an article that was online, a set of slides, or a video they could choose from. And after watching those, they're able to answer the student handout. They show it to me, get a stamp, and then they glue it into their notebook. And the notebook is something that I use with this unit because it allows the students to have all their information in one place. When they get done with a page, before it gets glued in, they get a stamp, and so that gives me a chance to review what they've learned, give them direct feedback, and it kind of holds them accountable to seeing me to get feedback instead of they put in the in basket, and if I need to talk to them, I got to find them again to have that conversation. So after they learn about the energy conversions, we start looking at the relationship between electromagnetic induction and the generation of electricity. And so we do this by making the world's simplest motor, which is about a $5 kit where they're using some wire that they bend and a magnet and a small battery to make a rotating coil. And they start looking at how the magnet and the flowing electricity are causing this coil to spin. And then the second part is they then look at how a spinning coil or a spinning magnet can then generate electricity. Because a lot of the marine renewable energy buoys are somehow using electromagnetic induction, moving a coil or moving a magnet with the power of the moving waves. So one of the things I've found is a lot of my students lack the skills in building circuits. And so I have a circuit day where they have a choice between basically 2 prepared kits and then my kind of free-for-all box of electrical parts. And they have to build for me 2 different types of circuits, and then they troubleshoot one circuit that they've built that I've basically taken apart in some way for them. Because later on in this unit, when we get to building the renewable wave buoys, a lot of times when they don't work, it's not because the technology is bad, it's because there's been a break in their circuit somewhere. And so it's beginning to develop the skill to troubleshoot these circuits so that they can come up with a functioning wave buoy. And so lesson number 4 is a localizing lesson. And so they use some online resources, maps, interactive websites to find out where the different kinds of renewable energy are in relation to Cottage Grove High School. And one of the things that I did when I was designing this unit is I tried to make the lessons adaptable to teachers across the United States. And so it's not just Oregon data that they have access to, it's going to be data for different forms of energy generation across the United States. And so I was able to get from the social studies department one of these huge maps of the United States, and they just put post-it notes on labeling the different types of renewable energy that were across the United States. And then that transitions into lesson 5, where we're looking at social, environmental, and equity issues with clean renewable energy. And so we started off with the map from lesson 4 with the location of these renewable energy sites. And then we looked at the maps of the tribal lands of the indigenous communities of the United States and looked at what land these renewable energy sites were sited on. And then the second part of this lesson is I created a bank of about 6 articles dealing with some of the environmental or equity issues with renewable energy. And so I'm in Oregon, and so some of the ones that I chose were about dam removal, blockage of salmon passage, how marine energy and marine reserves might be able to work together, how renewable energies for people in non-traditional home settings can be an issue and how to overcome some of those limitations. You know, if you're in a rental, how do you put solar on your roof? And so what some of the alternatives are. And so the students had to read one of those articles, answer a set of questions, dealing with the equity and summarizing it, and then they would basically share that with 2 other people, and we kind of jigsawed so that they were exposed to at least 3 different issues through that lesson. For lesson 6, we were looking at some of the variables that go into generating electricity with hydroelectric. And so one of the things I didn't know before I wrote this lesson is that the rungs on a standard ladder are 1 foot apart. And so when you're trying to raise the reservoir of your hypothetical dam, you can use a standard ladder to get some pretty even increments up there. And I'm not sure if it's the same with a metric ladder, but the US ladders I found work just great. Some of the variables the students looked at was the length of the penstock before the generator, and the generator was this little inline generator that you can put in a water line. And so they checked different variables like the height of the reservoir, how long the tubes in front of the generator were, how long the tubes after, if that impacted it, if you could put multiple generators on one penstock and get the same amount of power. And then they have a lab sheet that basically guides them through about 5 different stations where they're collecting data. And then once they've done this, they need to decide what is going to be the best setup to generate the most power. And then they have the materials and they can test it. And what I found is that with garden hose and warm water, if you dip the end of garden hose to soften it in the hot near boiling water, you can basically force it onto the end of those generators and very, very quickly assemble these things for students to use in this lab. Lesson 8 is looking at careers in renewable energy. And so students are provided a website that provides a list of different careers, and they basically have to create a trading card, which I define to them is 1 sheet of information with some very precise things on it, and it has to be very quick to read and very visually engaging. And so then they put these trading cards up and fill out a graphic organizer as the later part of the lesson. I skipped lesson 7 because this is the one that we're going to be doing as part of one of the renewable energy stations, and that is other forms of renewable energy besides hydroelectric dams. And so this is the marine renewable energy. And so this example right here is a floating offshore marine turbine. And so on the yellow table over there with the orange bucket, there's an example of that. And so I provide a visual example for the students and the supplies, and then allow them to design a floating buoy that's going to generate electricity. And with a lot of these, I like to have the energy produced visible to them, and a lot of times it's in the form of light. There's one station where, because the amount of electricity we generate so low, we have to use a voltmeter, but there's just something about seeing a light turn on that makes sense to the kids that this is a viable way of generating electricity. Just digital numbers going up and down doesn't seem to have the same impact. And so these Firefly kits, which you can order for about $10 each, provide a little LED light that's going to light up. And so the students have to experiment with how to configure that base so that when the wind hits that turbine, it's not going to basically cause your buoy to tip over and sink into the depths. And so for testing this time around, we had a a large trash can filled with water. Moving forward for this, I think I'm going to get a cement mixing container those are roughly 2 by 3 feet, a little bit shallower, but it provides more movement for the wind turbine within the container. The next one is electromagnetic induction buoy. And so this is the one that you guys are going to have the opportunity to work with. And so what it involves is a float that bobs up and down with the movement of the passing waves. Attached to that float is going to be a magnet that bobs up and down between some coils. And so through electromagnetic induction, that's going to be generating electricity. And so when we look at engineering standards, there's a lot of different variables that students can work with when designing this. They can control the number of coils that the magnet goes through, the spacing of the coils, the number of magnets. They can also experiment with the different diameters of the wire that they're using. And through this, they can then determine what the best setup is to generate electricity. So the next buoy that they built is based on this. I call it a wind buoy. And basically what happens is this buoy, as it bobs up and down in the water, the changing water level within that buoy is going to force air in and out of the top of the buoy. And so you have a wind turbine essentially located vertically that's going to be moved with every cycle of a passing wave. And one of the things I point out with the students is that a lot of these wave buoys don't generate a whole lot of electricity, but the difference is they generate electricity all the time. And so, that electricity then can be collected and used. And so this is the student version of the wave buoy. And so we have a 5-gallon bucket with floats, and then we have a tube, and in the middle of the tube is going to be a computer cooling fan with the wires sticking out. And so when the waves pass by that buoy, that air chamber within the bucket is going to change, moving air in and out. And so when we're modeling these with the students, a lot of times, because we can't generate the waves, what we do is we just pull the buoy up and down within the water so that it can change the volume of the air. And so I have a model of this over on the table for you to see as well. It's a slightly different version because the students were able to find a fan that is unidirectional, and so it doesn't matter which way the wind's blowing, it's always going to spin. And so this fan would stop every time it completed a cycle. It would push air in, stop, suck air in, stop. And with the fan that we have over there, it's going to continuously spin regardless of the way of the wind, and it's going to generate electricity a little bit more efficiently. And then one of the things that I try to include with a lot of these lessons is just something that is more, actually less structured. And so I have a Snap Circuit Green Energy Edition, and for some of the students that aren't really into building things, this was a great way for me to engage a small set of my class with renewable energy in a way that they felt more comfortable, which was, we have these parts, we're just going to assemble things following a recipe. And so that was actually a big hit with a lot of the kids. And so when I was developing this unit, and as a potential Envirothon participant, I think about what resources am I going to need as a teacher to help my students understand this thing. And so the National Energy Education Development Organization, NEED, is a great nonprofit that is a clearinghouse of all information related to energy production that a teacher might need. And the cool thing about this is they have it broken down by the types of energy generation, so coal, wind, marine renewable, hydroelectric. They provide teacher guides, and then they also provide a companion student guide. They have a lot of activities that are easy to implement with little preparation. And the best part for me was it's free, and it's easy to access. It's a PDF, and so you fill out a shopping cart, and then when you go to pay, it's all free, and within a couple minutes you get your PDFs downloaded, and you can burn up 200 or 300 pages of your school district's printer, printing them off and getting them out to your kids. And so this is what the site looks like, and you can see that they just have the different types of energy listed here. and then the different curriculum guides. And one of the things that I found is that when you go, it's kind of tough to differentiate between the student and the teacher guide, but you got to click on something else when you go to do the downloads to get both of them. One of the things I also like is they have a lot of information about careers, training, and where this energy is located within the United States. And so when I did the career trading cards, I was directed to a pretty good website through this curriculum. And so we'll learn more about renewable and marine energy with some of the stations over here. I'm going to turn it back over to Iain.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. A round of applause for Brian for sharing his examples with us. Thank you. All right. So in just a little bit, we're going to give you an opportunity to play and explore, and we've got a lot of stations set up over here. One of those is the Marine Renewable Energy Bobber. But we do want to also cover another topic that is important to us and also part of the Special Topic Challenge this year, and that is thinking about what do we mean when we say energy justice. And one thing I also want to say before we move into this energy justice section, something that we know that is really important as a skill for students to develop is an idea around discernment. There are many, many different types of renewable energy. None of them is the perfect solution to solving climate change, and we need a mix of all of them. And that means assessing pros and cons of every single kind of renewable energy. And that can get really complicated. So working towards energy literacy and working towards an ability to discern the pros and cons of renewable energy sources is something that we identify as really helpful for students, as especially with this challenge for the Envirothon, they're going to be coming up with a renewable energy plan for a community. And they're going to be needing to defend why the pros and cons of a certain energy source are worth it with their plan. So that's something that we are always looking to engender in our students, is that idea of energy literacy and leading to the ability to discern and make decisions about lots of different energy sources. Energy justice is also part of that. So what do we mean when we talk about energy justice? First, by show of hands, how many of you have heard of this phrase before, energy justice? Excellent. How many of you have heard of environmental justice? Excellent. Or climate justice is another phrase that we use. Very good. All right. So you may already know quite a bit about this, and I think that's wonderful. I do want to go over some definitions of terms that we use quite a bit. And I apologize, my font is a little small up here on the screen, but I will read these out for you. So when we're talking about these issues, especially around justice, around systems of power and influence, we like to define our terms. So for us, we define justice as the quality of being just, impartial, or fair, and a concern for justice, peace, and genuine respect for people. That is a very broad definition of justice. We also like to define equity, which is recognizing we do not all start from the same place and must acknowledge and make adjustments to imbalances. Power, in a political sense, is important for defining energy justice. The ability of an individual or group of people to influence the thoughts, actions, and mindsets of people in a nation. Again, a very broad definition. Environment, which is the natural world as a whole or in a particular geographical area, especially as affected by human activity. And then energy, as in physics, which is the stuff that makes stuff do stuff. That is one of my favorite definitions of the term energy. We didn't use it before, but it's very simple and it covers all of it, the stuff that makes stuff do stuff. So these are our shared definitions for conversations around energy justice. And when we talk about energy justice, we also have to talk about it in turn with environmental justice. The two are interlinked concepts, so it's important to define both of them. So we define energy justice, or we're using a definition from the U.S. Department of Energy. Environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. So that's the DOE's definition of environmental justice. There's quite a bit more here on this slide. I'm going to move forward a little bit, and again, you'll have access to these slides if you want to read in depth on this. When we're thinking about energy justice, We define it a little bit differently. Energy justice refers to the goal of achieving equity in both the social and economic participation in the energy system, while also remediating social, economic, and health burdens on those historically harmed by the energy system. How many of you have heard of the term frontline communities? Has anyone heard that term before? Frontline communities refers to communities who have historically borne the most of the burdens of our energy system. And so energy justice explicitly centers the concerns of marginalized communities and aims to make energy more accessible, affordable, clean, and democratically managed for all communities. The practitioner and academic approaches to energy justice emphasize these process-related and distributive justice concerns. And this definition comes from the Institute for Energy Justice, co-founded by Shalonda Baker, and we're going to get to her in a moment. It's where we draw a lot of our inspiration, and they are a bit of our guiding star for energy justice. I'm covering a lot here very quickly, so I apologize to shove a lot at you all at once. I hope that you have time to reflect on this after today. So we've defined environmental justice, we've defined energy justice, and we want to make it really clear they are interlinked concepts. They are very connected to each other, so it's difficult to talk about one without talking about the other. We also really want to acknowledge that injustice happens through imbalances in the structures of power. So we were talking about those frontline communities, people who do not have access to a lot of political power to influence decision making, so their communities do not bear the impacts of energy decisions. And justice is achieved through a process of democratization, welcoming more people into the decision-making process and giving them access to political power and social power so they can be part of that as well. And there's a common phrase when we're talking about a lot of this. You might have heard of it, justice first versus justice later. Has anyone heard that phrase before? It's okay if you haven't. And this phrase, a lot of times, is used in context with the clean energy transition. This idea that climate change is so close that we have to rush to fight against it, and that we can get to justice later. We can get to energy justice and environmental justice later. We just have to get the wind turbines in the ground. We just have to build it. And that is not the stance of our federal government in the Department of Energy. That's not the stance of our program. We believe that we can achieve justice first at the same time that we are doing all of these other parts of the process in developing clean energy. So I am going to give you just a moment to reflect a little bit and turn to your neighbors again. I have 3 questions here, and again, apologies for the size of the font. I will read them out for you. Take about 2 or 3 minutes and turn to your neighbor and share, first think a little bit, then pair off and share. How do issues of environmental and energy justice impact your students? What local energy projects do you want your students to be aware of? And with all of the terms that we've defined today, is there anything missing, or is there anything you would add to those definitions? They are shared definitions. That means we all get to participate in deciding how they work. So I'm going to set a timer for 3 minutes. I'd love for you to think and pair and share on these 3 questions. Go. So moving on, and I hope that you did have some things to think about in regards to these questions, that they did prompt some reflection in you, some ideas as to your teaching practice. I'm going to move through the rest of our slides for energy justice a little bit quickly because we do want to get to our hands-on station, and we want to make sure we also have some time at the end for Brian to share some reflections and to possibly take questions. If we don't have time to take questions, find me at any time throughout the day. You can bug me and ask me anything you want. So moving on, we did want to draw your attention to the places where we find a lot of inspiration for our discussion of energy justice as a program. So we follow and are very connected to this initiative for energy justice up here. This is a small nonprofit based out of Washington, D.C., co-founded by Shalonda Baker, and they have created a lot of definitions and frameworks around energy justice that are really helpful. So I'm going to go through a few of these just briefly so you can have a kind of a framework for how we're thinking about energy justice. So we're talking about this clean energy transition. Oftentimes we like to refer to it as a just transition. That means it's an energy transition that involves everyone who is affected by energy. And to achieve a just transition, we have these 4 things that need to happen. Advance energy democracy, so including more people in the process of making decisions about energy. Alleviate energy insecurity, so that is alleviating energy instability in communities, more consistent access to power, freedom from blackouts, freedom from brownouts, freedom from interruption in utility service to communities. Reducing energy burden, which refers to the cost of paying for energy. In some parts of the country, energy can be incredibly expensive. How many of you were following the Texas blackouts in I think that was 2021 or 2020, and just a lot of discussions around how Texas structures its energy market that produces a lot of inequity. So reducing energy burden is really important, and then alleviating energy poverty. So improving access to energy for communities who don't have access at the moment. These are all really important parts of this just transition. So here's the definitions of those, and again, these slides will be shared with you so you can follow up on them. A couple of other places that we also draw inspiration for our work and inform our work is the Justice 40 initiative from the federal government. Is anyone familiar with the Justice 40 initiative? So Justice 40 is part of Biden's administration to combat climate change and improve this clean energy transition so that it is just. It also pertains to other environmental remediation efforts as well. So it's an initiative which promises that 40% of overall benefits of certain federal investments flow to disadvantaged communities that are marginalized, underserved, and overburdened by pollution. So there are a lot of categories to this investment that qualify or have to meet this 40%. And those categories are climate change, clean energy and energy efficiency, clean transit, affordable and sustainable housing, training and workforce development, remediation and reduction of legacy pollution, and development of critical clean water and wastewater infrastructure. So all of those are part of this Justice 40 initiative rolled out by the Biden administration. And then we wanted to move a little bit more into energy justice in practice. So how do I start or continue my own journey in integrating energy justice into my teaching practice? And to wrap up this section here, I did want to offer some energy justice resources for you, and we will follow up with some more over email as well. The first is I would recommend you read this book, Revolutionary Power by Shalonda Baker, the founder of the Institute for Energy Justice. It is a crash course in our energy system in this country, and particularly in how we structure utilities, energy decision-making in our communities. I just read it a couple months ago. It really helped me get up to speed very quickly on these issues. So Revolutionary Power, an activist guide to the energy transition. A tool that you can use, and I also have these all compiled together on a link for you in just a moment on a QR code. The EPA's EJ screen, or Environmental Justice Screen, is a mapping tool that allows you to really look at socioeconomic data as well as Superfund sites, sources of air pollution, where energy development is happening. And it's a great tool for students to use, like the example that Brian provided where students were mapping out where energy is in their communities. So this EPA EJ screen is a great one. There are also a couple of other versions of this kind of mapping tool for energy and energy justice issues. We also have some curricula and lessons available for you on our website, and I'm going to share a link for that in just a moment. This one here is called Who is an Activist? It's from a unit called Designing a Sustainable City, and it was written by a couple of our fellows who work in the Gresham Barlow School District. Another one that we have on our website is called Bright Students, Brighter Future. And this is implemented by Clayton Hudeberg, which he lives up in Walla Walla. And we have a couple of others on our website as well. And then also it's important for us to define our stance on justice and power and then talk about, as an organization, our steps toward moving towards just energy education. And then I'm going to wrap up here with these definitions and then move on to our energy stations. So it's our mission to ensure that all students are prepared to lead the clean energy future. Therefore, CE is committed to taking an active stance on issues of race, justice, oppression as they exist in energy, STEM, and education. To achieve that, we are taking or looking to take these steps towards just energy education. Learning and engagement is part of that. So self-reflection for ourselves, trying to increase the amount of knowledge that we have access to, and engagement, which is connecting to communities and listening to communities. Critical self-reflection for us as individual practitioners, affirming the rights and power and expertise of educators. So you are all the experts on these issues and teaching and best practices in teaching, particularly science education. And so it's important for us to affirm that expertise. Centering and affirming the expertise of those with marginalized identities. We know in science education that the predominant voices in science education are cisgendered white men, and that is, we are trying to correct that through centering and affirming the expertise of those with marginalized identities. Culturally sustaining and gender-centered pedagogy. So creating a philosophy or a theory of change that is based on these ideas, and understanding and working towards addressing dominant narratives. So these are all pieces and steps that we've identified to move towards just energy education. All right, I just threw a whole lot of stuff at you. Again, these slides will be available for you to review in just a little while. But we want to move on to give you some time to play and explore. Oh, you're all ready? Perhaps? I hope so. So we have, let's see, let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, potentially 5 renewable energy stations set up for you on the tables over here. We're going to take, I believe, about 25 minutes or 20 minutes to explore those. At each station, the goal is going to be, can you generate electricity with this source? So we have solar circuitry. We have a bunch of solar panels and items to make circuits. There are lights over there in case the solar panels can't generate electricity from the light in the room today. We have a wind turbine with a fan. Your goal is to try to place wind turbine blades to get that to create electricity. Brian is going to be at his table with marine renewable energy and bobbers, and we'll be guiding you through that. There is a hydropower station, which may take a little bit of working to get it to generate electricity, but that's going to be a challenge for you today. And then I'm going to place myself at the hydrogen fuel cell station, which if you want a challenge, come join me over there. It is difficult to get hydrogen fuel to be created through electrolysis today, but we're going to see if we can do that and then power a car with it. We're going to take 20 minutes. I'm going to set a timer. When that timer goes off, I'm going to very much encourage you to pull yourself away from the station so that we can come back together and share some reflections and wrap up. And then I believe you'll have a break before we move on to our next section. Excellent. Thank you for listening, everybody. I'm setting my timer right now. Please walk over to a station that you are interested in, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We're doing the solar energy station over here.
Yeah.
A bit of water on that side, Joe, to keep it down.
All right, everybody. Thank you for doing your best to pause your very important work on our stations and join us back over here. We will leave the stations up for the rest of the day, too, so if you have a moment, you have a break or something like that, you can go over and you can continue playing if you'd like to. We want to move on to kind of wrap up our presentation and allow some time for some of our other guest speakers today to present. But before we do that, we did want to tell you a little bit about our programs at CE, and Brian's going to share some reflections based on that and then some resources as well. So the majority of our program is based on a fellowship model of professional development. We host usually around 2 to 3 cohorts of science teachers every year, and we work with teachers for usually about a year to 2 years through long-term, in-depth professional development opportunities. We work with science teachers across the country. So we have a lot of offerings based on geographic area. We continually have cohorts available for the Pacific Northwest, as long as you live in public power territory. So there are some requirements based on geographic restriction, but we do have a website where you can see our current offerings and decide for yourself if any of them are applicable to you and you'd like to apply. These programs run over a long period of time. Usually we're working with our fellows to develop an action plan to implement new clean energy curriculum in their communities. Those action plans can look like a lot of different things. Sometimes teachers are just making new curriculum. Sometimes teachers are planning events or sometimes creating an environmental club. We've had teachers work on garden infrastructure and renewable power for that garden before. So a lot of different things that we can help teachers do through our program. And I'd like to tell you a little bit more, but I'd also like to let Brian tell you a little bit about his own experience with the program, and then I'll share some resources for you to wrap up.
Can you guys hear me? Thanks. Okay, I think this one's on. So my involvement with clean energy, thank you, has been through their fellowship program. And I've participated in 2 of these fellowship programs. And what I've found is that it's a great opportunity to get support in stuff that you're already going to do. And so if you're like most teachers, you have a lot of ideas on things that you'd like to teach, units you'd like to develop. But one of the limiting factors is time. And all of our time is precious. And so through these fellowship programs, your time's going to be paid to develop a unit related to renewable energy or some sort of energy-related curriculum. And so that was one big draw that I found. The second is with a lot of the stuff that I've developed, it's hands-on, and very quickly when you start putting together classroom sets of supplies, it gets expensive. And so they have generous materials budgets to build these classroom sets to have your kids work through the lessons that you're creating to see how they're going to work. And so that's how I've gotten a lot of the materials to teach renewable energy within my classroom. And probably the best part is that it's a cohort you're working with, and with clean energy, they're going to bring industry professionals and experts to you to teach you about evolving technologies. And what I found helpful is they were the ones there to help me troubleshoot these renewable marine energy buoys to make them actually function. And so while I might have been able to develop the lesson and the unit on my own, the details on how to make these function, I couldn't have done without the support of the fellowship program. And so as you're looking forward to what your professional development looks like in the next year or two, one thing that I'd encourage you to do is look at what type of fellowship clean energy is going to be offering in the coming years, and consider doing that to develop some engaging curriculum that your students will enjoy and explore something new and have access to these professionals to really be able to do a good job at it. Thank you.
Excellent. One more round of applause for Brian for joining us today and sharing his knowledge of marine renewable energy. So we really hope that you find this program of interest and of help to you. At the back table, I have placed out a sign-up sheet. You can sign up there to be on our outreach list. We will start recruiting for new cohorts actually likely in January and February. And we'll be really providing very clear information on who the cohorts are available for, what eligibility looks like, and the application process. We would love for you to sign up so we can stay in touch with you and share with you when we have opportunities available. As well, I do really want to point out the stipends are a really important part of our work as professional development providers. So CE Fellows are offered generous stipends for their time as well as a materials budget. And so those are really important parts for us of centering educator expertise, of compensating you for your time for professional development opportunities. As well, Brian mentioned, we have a lot of industry experts come in. We have a lot of practitioners in this space come in and share knowledge with you. And as well, there's a lot of opportunities to connect with our larger educational community. Some other resources I want to share with you today, and if you have more questions about our fellowship program, please come up and talk to me. I can provide you with my contact information. You can email me after the fact. I would love to tell you more about what we do. I also wanted to share our energy justice resources with you today. If you'd like, you can scan this QR code and it will link to a Google Doc that is view only. You can make a copy for yourself. This will also be part of a follow-up email that I will send out. There are a lot of resources in this energy justice list, including some of the ones that I mentioned earlier. I'll leave that up for just a moment. Also, please don't forget, everyone can take home a solar circuitry bag with them today. This has some wires, a couple different solar panels, some motors, a CE sticker, and some other things. Everyone can take one home today. There's a big pile in the back of the room. We also have some web resources for you. So part of working with teachers What we do in collaborating on curriculum with them is we also host it for free on our website. So every piece of curriculum on this website, cebrightfutures.org/teach, or scan that QR code, is something that has been developed by teachers in collaboration with us. We know that there is a vast amount of STEM curriculum online. It is really hard to have the time to vet if that curriculum is worth your time. It's also really hard to vet who developed that curriculum and whether or not they have a specific interest in having you teach that topic. So we hope that having a library of resources and curriculum made by teachers for teachers alleviates some of that burden of finding good curriculum. And this QR code will also be part of the resources that we send out at the end. And then please contact us. We want to hear from you. Brian's email is here on the screen. So is mine. You can ask for my business card today, and I have a stack at the back of the room as well. My time is for you. So if you have questions, if you are looking for a resource or materials, or looking for a PD opportunity, or really just wanting to get connected into clean energy education, I can definitely help direct you in the right direction and help you find what you're looking for. Thank you all so much. It was wonderful to meet you today. Please come talk to me afterwards.